He was denied a medal, but what happened at the ceremony left everyone speechless. The sun was sharp and hot over Fort Bragg, burning down on rows of proud soldiers in polished uniforms. Families sat in the crowd, smiling and snapping photos. An announcer's voice echoed across the field, reading out names one by one. Applause followed each name. Medals were handed out. Some soldiers wiped tears from their eyes as they were called forward. But one man sat still, Sergeant Andre Coleman. His back was straight, his eyes fixed ahead, but his hands, they were clenched, just slightly, because his name still hadn't been called, not once, not even mentioned. He'd led the most dangerous mission in the last 6 months. He was injured saving his team. Everyone here knew it. Yet he sat, watching others walk across the stage, receiving praise he'd never asked for, but definitely earned. A whisper started behind him. Wait, did they skip Coleman? No way, he's got to be next. Even his team looked confused, exchanging glances. His best friend, seated just one row back, leaned forward. It's a mistake, he whispered. Hang tight. Andre didn't move, not a blink, not a word. But something inside him sank. Slowly. The ceremony continued. Another name, more applause, still nothing. He thought about the morning, how his mother had fixed his collar with trembling fingers, how his father had said, "We're proud of you, no matter what." He'd smiled, felt hopeful. And now, the final speaker walked to the podium. He was a senior officer, older, sharp, confident. He cleared his throat and said, "That concludes today's ceremony. Thank you all for joining us, and God bless our troops." There was a pause, a strange silence. Then the crowd began clapping. But not his team, not Andre's family, not Andre himself. He just sat there, perfectly still, his chest rising and falling slowly, almost like he was holding his breath. His mother whispered, "Maybe they forgot." His friend stood up, furious. "This is wrong," he muttered. But Andre just stood, slowly, quietly, like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just been erased. The ceremony ended. People milled around, shaking hands, hugging loved ones. Some soldiers walked up to him, awkward, unsure what to say. "You should have been up there," one of them said. "I thought you were a sure thing." He nodded politely. "Thanks." But inside, his heart was heavy. That night, back in his room, Andre took off his uniform piece by piece. The jacket, the shoes, the bandage still wrapped around his shoulder where a bullet had torn through during the mission. He sat on the edge of his bed and stared at the wall. He didn't need medals. That's what he told himself. He wasn't in it for the applause. But still, he thought about that moment in the desert, how he'd shouted for his team to run, how he'd stood up out in the open, drawing fire so they could escape, how he didn't think twice about taking that risk. And now, not even a mention? His phone buzzed, a message from his squad group chat. "They messed up. You deserve better. We got your back." Andre stared at the screen, then put the phone down. He wasn't angry. He was just tired. Tired of being the one who kept his head down. Tired of pretending everything was okay when it clearly wasn't. He looked at his reflection in the mirror. Same uniform, same man. But something had shifted. Something felt different now. He didn't know what would come next, but deep down, he knew one thing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And the story? It was just getting started. Andre woke up early the next morning, even though he'd barely slept. The room was quiet, but his mind wasn't. He kept replaying the ceremony over and over, each name that had been called, each handshake, each round of applause, the silence when his name was skipped. He stared at the ceiling for a long time before sitting up and rubbing his face. His shoulder still hurt from the mission, but that pain was easier to deal with than what he felt inside, confused, angry, and disappointed. He dressed in his standard uniform, skipping breakfast. His appetite was gone. As he stepped outside, the air was cool, a contrast to the burning heat of yesterday's ceremony. Soldiers passed him, some nodding with respect, others looking away awkwardly. Whispers followed him again, not out of curiosity this time, but out of discomfort. Nobody really knew what to say. Most of them had watched the ceremony. Most of them knew something had gone wrong. Andre walked toward the mess hall, not because he was hungry, but because routine was the only thing holding him steady. Just as he reached the doors, he heard someone call out, "Coleman!" He turned. His friend, John, was jogging toward him, face tight with frustration. "Man, we need to talk." Andre gave him a tired look. "About what happened?" John nodded. "You should have been up there, front and center. Everyone knows it. Even command." Andre said nothing. "I've been hearing things," John continued. "Rumors. People talking. Some are saying Simmons never intended to include you." Andre raised an eyebrow. "Why?" John hesitated. "You know how it is. They say, maybe it's your background. Maybe he just didn't like that it was you who saved the team." Andre looked down at the ground. That weight in his chest grew heavier. He'd dealt with stuff like this before, sure, but never this openly, never this painfully. He took a deep breath. "It's fine." "No," John snapped. "It's not fine. You took a bullet for us. You led us through a trap we shouldn't have survived. This isn't something we let slide." Andre looked up at him. "What are you suggesting?" "We go on record, file a formal complaint. You don't have to do it alone. The whole squad's behind you." Andre was silent for a long time. Then he shook his head. "That's risky. Going against a senior officer? You know how that looks." "So what?" John said. "We're just supposed to sit here and act like nothing happened? Like what you did didn't matter?" Andre opened his mouth, then closed it again. His thoughts were loud, but his voice wouldn't come out. Later that day, he met with his squad privately. They were all there, faces filled with support, but also frustration. One of the younger soldiers, barely out of training, looked at Andre with wide eyes. "Sir, you saved my life out there. If anyone deserves that medal, it's you." Andre sat down slowly and looked at them all. They were more than a squad. They were a family. And now they were hurting too. Not just for him, but for the message it sent to all of them. That sacrifice could be ignored. That bravery could be overlooked. One of them stood up and said, "We already started putting it together. The report, the mission logs, testimonies, we've got your back." Andre looked at the folder in his hands. His fingers trembled slightly. "You shouldn't have to fight for what you already earned," one of them said. "But if you do, we'll fight with you." The room fell quiet. Then finally, Andre spoke. "If we do this," he said slowly, "we do it right. No shouting, no anger, just facts. The truth." Everyone nodded. That night, Andre sat alone in his room with the folder in front of him. He flipped through the pages, mission reports, maps, statements from each member of his team. Every word reminded him of that day, the fear, the decision. The moment he stood up and ran into fire to protect the people behind him. He closed the folder and rested his hand on it. Maybe he hadn't wanted the medal, but now it wasn't about the medal anymore. It was about the truth. And tomorrow, they would begin the fight for it, together. Andre stood alone in his quarters, holding the report in his hands. But he wasn't seeing the words anymore. His mind had drifted, back to the desert, to the day everything changed. It had started before sunrise. The air had been cold and still, the kind that told you something was coming. Andre's squad was already geared up, nerves tight, but focused. This wasn't just another patrol. They were heading into unknown territory, a region rumored to be crawling with hostile forces. Andre had led many missions before, but this one had a different weight. Intelligence had picked up chatter about a possible enemy outpost tucked between two steep cliffs. The goal was simple: get in, confirm the intel, get out. But every experienced soldier knew simple usually meant dangerous. He remembered gathering his team just before they moved out. No jokes, no small talk. Just steady hands checking gear, loading rounds, saying silent prayers. "Remember the plan," Andre had said, his voice calm but firm. "We move as one, no heroes. We get in and out together." They nodded, trusting him completely. They moved through dry brush and jagged rocks for hours. The sun began to rise, turning the ground into a burning plate of heat. Dust clung to their faces, their gear, their lungs. Then came the first shot. It rang out sharp, loud, and close. "Contact. Right. Side!" someone shouted. Chaos exploded instantly. Gunfire from both sides, echoes bouncing off the canyon walls. Andre's squad scrambled for cover behind rocks, broken vehicles, anything solid. "Stay low," Andre yelled, crawling to a vantage point. He could see the enemy's position, high ground, well fortified. They were pinned, trapped. A younger soldier to his left was shaking, frozen in place. Andre reached over, pulled him down behind a boulder just as bullets sparked off the rock inches above. "We're sitting ducks here," John shouted from behind another ledge. "They've got us locked." Andre's mind raced. No backup, no air support. The only chance was a narrow ravine to the west, a path with enough cover to escape. But it meant someone had to draw the enemy fire long enough for the others to get there. He knew what he had to do. "Listen up," Andre yelled. "On my signal, pairs move west. Leapfrog, fast, I'll cover." "Sarge, no," John said immediately. "That's suicide." Andre locked eyes with him. "Just get them out." Before anyone could argue, he bolted out from behind the rock, firing, his weapon in short, sharp bursts. Enemy fire turned instantly toward him. Bullets tore up the dirt around his feet, the sound of gunfire nearly deafening. He kept moving, zigzagging across the open space, forcing the enemy to focus on him. Behind him, his squad made a break for the ravine. One by one, they disappeared into cover. Then it happened. A sharp, searing pain tore through his left shoulder. It felt like fire had exploded inside his arm. He staggered, but didn't fall. Gritting his teeth, he kept firing, forcing himself to move. "Coleman!" John's voice echoed. "We're clear! Fall back!" Andre turned, barely able to lift his weapon now. He sprinted or tried to. His feet felt like stone. His vision blurred. Somehow, he made it. He collapsed at the edge of the ravine, John catching him just in time. "You're crazy," John muttered, his voice shaking. "You absolute maniac." Andre gave him a weak smile. "Can't let you die. My mom would never forgive me." Despite everything, a nervous laugh passed between them. Then it was back to business. Andre, wounded, bleeding, and barely standing, kept giving orders. The team flanked the enemy from behind, using the high ground. Within 40 minutes, the firefight was over. The outpost was cleared, and the squad, every last one of them, was alive. Andre had led them through hell and brought them back. Later, at the base, the medics forced him into surgery. But even then, he refused to be moved until he'd seen every one of his soldiers get back safe. That mission wasn't just a battle. It was a test of leadership, of sacrifice, of heart. Now, back in the present, Andre sat in silence. No medals had been handed to him for that day, no stage, no applause. But he had something else, his team, and their belief in him hadn't wavered. He stood, the folder of reports in his hand. That day had cost him blood, pain, and a piece of himself. And now, the least he could do was make sure the truth was heard. Tomorrow, they would submit it. And whatever came after that, he was ready. The next morning, Fort Bragg woke up the same way it always did. Drills, movement, orders echoing through hallways. But for Andre, everything felt different. He walked through the base with the formal report tucked under his arm. It felt heavier than it should have, not because of the pages, but because of what it meant. Once he turned this in, there would be no going back. He knew the risks. He also knew how the system worked. Some officers didn't like to be questioned, especially not by someone like him. Quiet, professional, black, respected by his team, but still treated as invisible in some rooms. Andre wasn't naive. As he walked past the operations building, a few people gave him polite nods. Others looked away. It was starting already. The whispers, the tension. John caught up with him just before the doors. "You ready?" he asked. Andre didn't answer right away. He looked up at the building, then down at the report in his hands. "I don't know," he admitted. John frowned. "We're with you. All of us. You know that, right?" Andre nodded. "I know. But that's what worries me." John looked confused. "How?" "This doesn't just affect me," Andre said. "Once this goes up the chain, they're going to come after the source. I can take that. But you guys? You've got careers ahead of you. Promotions, futures." John stepped in front of him, voice low but steady. "You gave us a future, man. Out there in that canyon, you didn't think twice. You put your life on the line. The least we can do is stand beside you now." Andre gave a small smile, but it faded quickly. That afternoon, he sat down with the company's legal rep, a quiet woman with sharp eyes and a firm tone. She flipped through the report page by page, occasionally glancing up at him. "You understand what this might cause, right?" she finally said. Andre nodded. "Yes. You're making a serious claim against a high-ranking officer. If it's proven true, it could shake up more than just this base." He stayed quiet. She closed the folder. "And if it's not taken seriously?" "I know," he said again, cutting her off gently. "All right," she said, pushing back. From the desk. "I'll submit it, but I hope you're ready for what comes next." He was. Sort of. Later that evening, he sat on a bench just outside the barracks, staring up at the dull orange sky. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the concrete. That's when his phone buzzed. It was his mother. He hesitated before answering. "Hey, Mama," he said softly. "Hi, baby. You okay?" Andre didn't answer right away. "I'm doing what I think is right," he finally said. "Even if it's hard." There was silence on the other end. Then her voice came through warm but trembling. "You've always done that, even when you were little. Always the one standing up. For others." Andre felt the lump rise in his throat. "They left me out, Mama," he said quietly. "On purpose." "I know," she whispered. "We saw it in your face." Another pause. Then she said something he didn't expect. "Do you want to fight it?" He thought about that. Did he? The honest answer? He didn't want to. He wanted to let it go, stay quiet, keep the peace. But he also knew something deeper. If he let this go, what message would it send to the next soldier like him? The ones who fought hard, led bravely, bled for their brothers and sisters. Would they look at him and think silence was the only option? "No," he said finally. "I don't want to fight it, but I have to." His mother's voice cracked with emotion. "Then fight, baby. Just don't forget who you are." He didn't. The next morning, word spread like fire. Andre had filed a formal complaint. By noon, half the base knew. By evening, the story had somehow leaked beyond the base. Someone from the squad had anonymously shared it with a veteran blog. Suddenly, people were talking. Online. In forums. In whispers around the mess hall. Andre walked into breakfast and the room went quiet. Then, slowly, soldiers began nodding at him. Some came over to shake his hand. Others just offered a pat on the shoulder and moved on. But the message was clear. They saw what he did, and more importantly, they agreed. That night, John came into his room again. No folder, no plans, just 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Andre and sat down across from him. "You good?" he asked. Andre nodded slowly. "I don't know what's going to happen next," he said. John smirked. "Well, that makes 2 of us." Then they sat in silence, 2 soldiers side by side. No speeches, no promises, just 2 men who knew a storm was coming and were ready to face it together. And somewhere deep inside, for the first time in days, Andre Coleman felt the tiniest flicker of hope. 2 days had passed since Andre filed the complaint. On the surface, the base kept moving like normal, briefings, drills, formations. But underneath, something was shifting. People were talking, not loudly, but in hushed voices. Soldiers he'd never spoken to before were starting to nod in quiet solidarity when they passed him in the hallway. Others watched him more cautiously, like they were waiting to see what would happen next. John told him, "The whole squad's behind you, but just so you know, you lit a fire." And he had. Because late that night, something strange happened. Andre's phone buzzed around midnight. He was still up, sitting on the edge of his bed, unable to sleep. He picked it up, expecting a message. From John, or maybe his mom. But it wasn't either. It was a link. No name, no caption, just a video. He tapped it. The screen lit up with a familiar image. Him. A still photo taken from deployment. Behind it, a deep voice began narrating. "This is Sergeant Andre Coleman, decorated, respected, wounded in battle while saving the lives of his entire squad. But when it came time for recognition, they left his name off the list." Andre froze. The voice was steady, clear, and angry. The video showed footage from their mission. Helmet cams, blurred clips, maps. His name was mentioned again and again, with statements from fellow soldiers, anonymous but unmistakably real. He didn't just lead us, he saved us. They overlooked him because of who he is, not what he did. The video ended with a simple, piercing sentence. "Tell us why Sergeant Coleman didn't get his medal." Andre's heart was racing. He checked the view count, over 30,000, and climbing fast. He sat there stunned, watching the numbers go up. Someone had leaked their mission footage and squad testimonials. Not the official complaint, just the truth. Unfiltered, raw, real, and the world was watching. By morning, the base was buzzing. More soldiers were on their phones than usual. Screens were lighting up with the same clip. Twitter, Instagram. Even some of the big news sites had started sharing it. Someone had made sure people knew what happened. Andre felt torn, part of him overwhelmed, the other part terrified. He didn't ask for this kind of attention. He only wanted fairness, respect. But now, it had gone national. Later that day, John found him outside the admin building. "You've seen it, right?" he asked. Andre just nodded. John grinned. They're finally listening. But not everyone was happy. That afternoon, Andre was called into his commander's office. The mood was tense. She slid a tablet across the desk. "I assume you've seen this?" Andre nodded again. She leaned forward. "You're in the middle of something bigger than you realize. We're hearing from high up, way above my level. The Pentagon's watching. The Secretary of Defense's team just called for a copy of the mission report." Andre didn't know what to say. He wasn't trying to be a symbol, but he also couldn't ignore what was happening. "This isn't just about a medal anymore," she continued. "This is about trust, about how we treat our soldiers. You didn't plan for this, but it's here now. So the question is, what do you want to do next?" That question haunted him the rest of the day. He walked to the chapel that evening. It was empty, quiet. He sat in the back pew and stared at the stained glass. It had always been his place to clear his head, not to ask for answers, just to sit, to listen. And after a long silence, he whispered to himself, "I just want the truth to matter." That night, everything changed again. Andre was heading back to his quarters when his phone buzzed one more time. This time, it wasn't a video. It was a notification from a news app. Breaking. Secretary of Defense to make public statement on military award process. The headline hit him like a wave. He tapped the link. A press conference had been announced for the next morning. The title? Addressing Recognition and Reform in the Armed Forces. His name wasn't in the headline, but it didn't need to be. Everyone on base already knew what it was about. John called immediately. "You seeing this?" Andre stared at the screen. "Yeah." "You think they're gonna fix it?" Andre didn't answer right away. He looked out his window at the parade field below, now empty under the moonlight. "I don't know," he said quietly, "but I think they're listening now." And that was more than he ever expected. Now the whole country was watching, and for the first time, the silence surrounding his name was finally being broken. The next morning came quietly. Andre stood in front of his mirror, hands steady as he adjusted the collar of his freshly ironed uniform. He had done this 1,000 times before patrols, before briefings, before hard days in the field. But today felt different, because today, the whole world was watching. His phone buzzed again and again, flooded with messages. From old friends, from fellow soldiers stationed overseas, from family he hadn't heard from in years. They had all seen it. The Secretary of Defense's announcement was everywhere now. "We will no longer allow acts of bravery and leadership to go unseen because of outdated biases. Starting today, a new military commendation will be introduced, the Valor and Integrity Medal." And then, the moment that sent a shockwave through the base, our first recipient, Sergeant Andre Coleman of Fort Bragg. When he first heard it, Andre didn't react. Not at first. He just sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor, hands resting on his knees. The words echoed in his head like they weren't real. After everything, the silence, the ceremony, the sting of being ignored, this felt almost too big to process. But now, hours later, as he stood lacing up his boots, it was real. Someone knocked at the door. He opened it to find John standing there in a clean dress uniform, grinning like a proud older brother. "You ready?" he asked. Andre exhaled. "As I'll ever be." They made their way to the parade field where rows of soldiers were already gathering. The energy in the air felt electric, like something historic was about to happen. Andre could hear whispers again, but this time, they weren't the same. As before, they were filled with respect, with pride, with something he hadn't felt in weeks: hope. Flags waved gently in the breeze. The podium at the front was polished, and standing near it, surrounded by officers and media, was the Secretary of Defense herself. She was smaller than he'd imagined from the photos, but she held herself like someone who knew exactly who she was and why she was here. As Andre walked forward with John by his side, the crowd slowly went quiet. The weight of the moment settled on his chest. Not fear, not nerves, just gravity. This was real. The secretary stepped up to the mic, her voice clear, steady. "We are here today not just to honor one man, but to correct a wrong. One that never should have happened in the first place." She turned and looked directly at Andre. "Sergeant Coleman, your actions on the battlefield were extraordinary, but what makes you a true hero is not just what you did under fire. It's what you did afterward, quietly, with integrity, without bitterness." Andre swallowed hard, fighting the emotion rising in his chest. "You showed courage," she continued, "not only in war, but in the face of injustice. And for that, you didn't ask for attention. You didn't demand credit. But we saw. And now the country sees you too." A Marine aide stepped forward, holding a small velvet box. The secretary opened it and carefully pinned the new medal on Andre's uniform, a silver and bronze insignia with an eagle and flame at its center. "The Valor and Integrity Medal," she said, "is not just about battlefield bravery. It's about the character behind the uniform, and you, Sergeant Coleman, are the first to wear it." There was a beat of silence, then applause. Not forced, not polite, but real. A wave of it. Soldiers stood to clap. His team cheered. His mother cried quietly in the front row. His father gave a slow nod, eyes shining with unsaid words. John leaned in and whispered, "Told you they couldn't ignore you forever." Andre gave a small smile. "It was never about me." "No," John said. "But you made it about something bigger, and that's what makes you a leader." After the ceremony, Andre was pulled in every direction. Handshakes, photos, interviews. He didn't want to give, but through it all, he stayed grounded. He answered humbly. He deflected praise to his squad. He shook hands like a man who didn't need a spotlight to feel whole. Later that night, alone in his quarters, he took the medal off and laid it gently on the desk. He sat back in the chair, staring at it, not out of pride, but reflection. It was never about being recognized. It was about what was right. And finally, someone had listened. Not just to him, but to every soldier who had ever been overlooked, brushed aside, or told to wait their turn. This was for all of them, too. His phone buzzed one last time before bed. It was a message from an unknown number. Just one line. "Thank you for standing up. You gave people like me a voice." Andre stared at it for a long time. Then, with quiet peace, he turned off the light and laid down. He still didn't know what would come next, but for the first time in weeks, he finally slept. And he slept deeply, like someone who had done exactly what they were meant to do. A week had passed since the ceremony, but for Andre, it hadn't sunk in yet. The medal sat on a shelf by his window, catching the afternoon light. Every time he looked at it, it reminded him of two things: the weight of responsibility and the strength that comes from being seen, really seen, for who you are. Life on base had returned to its steady rhythm, briefings, drills, reports. But the air felt different now. People greeted him with more than just polite nods. There was respect in their voices, warmth in their eyes. He wasn't just Sergeant Coleman anymore. He was a symbol of change, of courage, of what it looks like to speak the truth when it's easier to stay quiet. Still, he hadn't let it go to his head. Andre had never been one for attention. He still cleaned his own boots, still ate in the mess hall with his squad, still walked the perimeter when he couldn't sleep. He was the same man he'd always been, only now people were listening. It was during one of those late-night walks that his phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from his commanding officer. "Report to HQ in the morning. SecDef's team is requesting a sit-down. They want your input. No pressure." Andre stared at the message. He knew what it meant. They weren't just giving him a medal. They were asking him to be part of something bigger. The next day, he met with senior officers and members of the Secretary of Defense's task force. Not in a suit, not behind a podium, but across a table, as a soldier with lived experience. They asked questions. He answered honestly. What was broken? What needed fixing? What was it like to lead with integrity and be ignored for it? Andre didn't sugarcoat anything. He didn't blame, but he didn't hold back either. And when he finished, one of the policy officers leaned forward and said, "We need more voices like yours, Sergeant. If you're willing, we'd like you to join the advisory group." Andre thought about it for a long moment. "I'm willing," he said. "As long as we're not just talking. I want to help build a system where every soldier, no matter where they come from, has a real shot." The room nodded. It wasn't a grand speech, but it was the start of something real. Over the next few months, Andre split his time between his duties on base and work with the advisory group. He helped review promotion protocols, worked on new leadership evaluation models, and sat in rooms with generals and policymakers who finally realized that rank didn't always equal wisdom, and people were watching. One afternoon, as Andre left a young private approached him, nervous, fidgeting. "Sergeant Coleman?" he asked. "Sorry to bother you. I wanted to say thank you. Before I enlisted, I wasn't sure people like me had a place here. Then I saw your story. It changed everything." Andre shook his hand, firm and steady. "Don't thank me," he said. "Just keep showing up. Keep leading." The young soldier nodded, eyes wide. "I will." That night, Andre sat by his window, the sunset washing his room in golden light. The medal still gleamed on the shelf, but it wasn't what caught his attention. It was the message from his sister that morning. "I got in, West Point. I leave, in the fall." He smiled quietly. She'd followed through. She was going to wear the uniform too, not because she wanted the glory, but because she'd seen what it meant to lead with heart. Andre picked up the medal, feeling the weight of it in his hands. Then he set it down gently and looked out across the base. He had done what he came here to do. He had served. He had protected. And when it mattered most, he had spoken up. Not for praise, not for payback, but because silence wouldn't have honored the men and women who had trusted him with their lives. Now, others would walk through doors he helped open, and that was the real reward. The sky turned purple with evening. The wind was quiet. Somewhere on base, taps began to play, soft, slow, full of meaning. Andre stood, straightened his shoulders, took a breath, and walked into the night. Because change had come, and he wasn't done yet. He was just getting started. The end.